Welcome to Inside Auto Podcast, where we feature everyone and anyone you'd want to talk to in and out of the automotive industry.
Ilana Shabtai here, host of Inside Auto Podcast, where we interview top dealers, GMs, marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders in and out of the automotive industry. And before we introduce today's guest, this episode is sponsored by AutoLeadStar.com. AutoLeadStar is automotive's first and leading customer data and experience platform, CDXP. Top dealers invest in CDXPs to unify dealership data sources, automatically create one-to-one customized journeys, and execute omni-channel shopping experiences. It's an all-in-one connected platform. Today, we're welcoming Joe Overby to our podcast. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lana. Thank you so much for having me. Good to talk to you again.
Yes, you too. We were just saying how Joe was one of the first people I met in automotive back in 2016. So I'm really excited to reconnect with you today. For those listening, Joe is senior editor of Auto Remarketing and Auto Remarketing Canada at Cherokee Media Group and the co-host of his very own podcast, Auto Remarketing Podcast. He's also part of the agenda team for Cherokee Media Group's automotive events and conferences, where he also serves as a panel moderator. I know a big one's coming up, so we'll talk about that on today's podcast episode. Again, thank you for joining us. Let's just open up. Tell us a little bit about the publication Auto Remarketing. I know you've been there for quite a bit. I'd love to know the nature of what you report on. Craziest story you've ever covered, if you have that. Just tell us a little bit about the publication.
Sure. So we Auto Remarketing and I guess it was about 2 years ago, we combined all of our publications and all the U.S. publications into one. So we have Auto Remarketing, which covers the retail and wholesale used car markets in the U.S. And then we have Subprime Auto Finance News, which covers the subprime finance markets. And then we have Auto Fin Journal, which does cover kind of the overall auto finance market, but a lot on fintech and a lot of the tech developments that we've seen in the auto finance space. And then we have our Buy Here, Pay Here report, which covers the Buy Here, Pay Here market in the U.S. And then separately, we have the Auto Remarketing Canada magazine, which is focuses specifically on the retail and wholesale auto markets in Canada. And then we've got a whole bunch of daily and weekly e-newsletters that we send out, kind of tailored to those specific pieces of automotive. And then, of course, we have associated with all that, we have our conferences, kind of that are our motto is in person, in print, and online. And so we things that I write about, for our daily e-newsletters will go in the print magazine, and that'll also be might be a topic we discuss at our live events. But to answer your question about craziest story, I don't know if it's the craziest, but certainly is the biggest. And I just celebrated 15 years of being here at Cherokee Media Group. And thank you.
A big milestone.
It really is. I feel I've been there forever. It's flown by, but it's been a lot of fun. But I think the biggest
really seen the industry evolve. Like you're in it. You're in the news from 15 years ago to now.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, it was, companies that didn't even exist, in 2007 are now publicly traded, and companies that have merged. But the biggest news that I think that we've covered in that time, probably aside from the GM and Chrysler bankruptcy process back in 08, 09, probably was the ADESA or Car Global selling its U.S. ADESA auctions to Carvana. They've been one of the biggest companies we've covered over the past 15 plus years, and didn't think I'd see the day where a wholesale company would sell auctions to a retail company. But it's happening more and more.
And do you, I thought you were going to say, once you were talking about the bankruptcy, I thought you were going to say that COVID. I don't know why. I thought that was that probably, that too. And also this, COVID was, it's so insane to see the car market just from COVID, like not even during COVID, but also post-COVID. It's been nuts. But that probably had a crazy toll also on someone who was doing two live events a year. Is that accurate? Or
So we had that in 2020. At that point, we had 3 conferences. So we had
three?
our Auto Remarketing Canada, Auto Intel Summit, and Used Car Week. But yeah, I guess I kind of
I was
blocked it out
doing
of my
like
mind.
yeah.
COVID. So that when things started to just hit the fan and things started to shut down, mid-March of 2020, Nick and I, Nick who covers our auto finance pieces, we were for about a period of like 2 or 3 weeks, every single story we wrote had to do with COVID.
Yeah.
Whether it was, updating like auctions shutting down, finance companies doing loan forgiveness, dealers having to do all digital sales. Every single story we wrote, for 2 weeks was COVID related. So yeah, on second thought, that actually might be the craziest period of reporting for me.
Well, because you were reporting on such a crazy thing that was affecting the industry, and then it was also affecting your workflow because
Oh
what we
yeah,
do about live events. So that was probably huge uh, hit. Not
yeah.
necessarily. You probably figured everything out by now, but um, talking about your events. So tell us a little bit about the specific event that's coming up, Used Car Week. Now, from what I remember, it was usually in Vegas, and it's going to be in San Diego for the first time in a while, or the first time
Yeah,
ever.
it's first time since 2013.
Wow.
And typically we've had probably more regularly we've had it in Vegas at
Yeah.
Red Rock. We've switched between there and Scottsdale, Arizona,
Oh, cool.
and a few years ago we had it at in Palm Springs, California. But usually we're somewhere in the
Like the warm weather.
oh
Warm
yeah, exactly.
weather. Yeah.
That is by design. We always do it
That is
somewhere in
on.
the hot Southwest. And yeah, we've added San Diego back to our regular rotation, and yeah, it's we're excited about going there. It's I was there back in 2013 when we had it there, and it's beautiful location, beautiful city, and you can't really beat San Diego weather in the middle of November, especially here in the East Coast, where it's we had frost warnings this morning and it was about 37 degrees outside. So I'm looking forward to getting out there to San Diego in a couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And what's the nature of that conference? What type of people come, vendors or dealers alike?
Yeah, so it kind of spans the whole spectrum of used car automotive and really um, all of our like segments that we cover. So
Okay.
it's divided into 2 blocks. We have the first block which includes the pre-owned con, which is retail automotive, and the auto fin con, which is auto finance, and then the repo con, which kind of gets into the recovery and collection space.
Okay.
Attendees in the first half of the week, we have dealers, we have the vendors, people who sell to dealers, different tech companies. We have a lot of auto auctions, the banks, and then companies that work with banks, and the other kind of auto lending community.
Cool.
And then in the second half of the week, second block is the National Remarketing Conference, which has been kind of our flagship event, covers wholesale auto auction industry. And then we added a conference last year, and this will be our second year with it. It's called the Navicon, which stands for the National Auto Venture and Investors Conference. And so that really dives into the whole not just kind of the Wall Street and Silicon Valley investment piece of it, but also a lot of the startups, a lot of the new tech companies that are emerging, and a lot of the topics there are about kind of just how companies grow from an initial startup, and how they get funded and eventually be publicly traded or sold, and that conference kind of walks attendees through that entire process. Second block of the week really is a lot of auto auctions, a lot of consigners, the people selling cars at auctions. We have a lot of vendors, companies that work with the auto auction community. And then because of Navicon, we're getting a lot more startups, a lot more, venture capital and investment community folks in that second half of the week. But one thing I've noticed just from looking at our registration numbers this year, a lot of people the majority of people who are coming to Used Car Week are staying the whole week, or they're at least, signing up for both blocks. So you really have, dealers and auctions and people who might be in retail, people who might be in wholesale, people who might be in finance, they're all intermingled. And, because the sessions are held concurrently, somebody who's a dealer could go to a session that's meant for auto finance people and kind of learn something new.
That's really great. And I feel like that's also different content
Mhm.
than other conferences offer. So it's nice to see some refreshing content out
Yeah.
there. I know that, when I'm very focused, obviously, on the digital side, being a technology for automotive dealers. But when I go to conferences, I very much feel like a lot of the content is repetitive. So it's nice that dealers have an opportunity to get some fresh content. So I'm sure they
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hope so.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be a lot of talk about the used car prices? So I know that a lot of what has been happening in the used car world is that prices shot higher than it was a record, right, this year, with inventory shortage and other challenges that came our way. What was that like, first of all, reporting on that? And what have you seen? What do you predict? And then do you feel like that's going to be a focus of the conference? Or do you feel like it's kind of in the past for them, or it's been kind of, over, spoken about at this point?
Well, we will have a one session that comes to mind that really will focus in on that. My colleague Nick Zulovich is going to be moderating a panel with, I believe, 4 or 5 different auto economists and analysts from Black Book and Cox Automotive and CAR, I believe, and NAAA. And they're really going to get into both how, overall economic trends, but also used car pricing trends. And that's really been such a big story for us for the past really 2.5 years largely because of COVID and everything that the fallout from there. I mean, you had April 2020 used car prices just tanked because
Vomit.
nobody was able to get out and buy used cars. And then sort of that summer, they started rising again, and really, all through 2021 and most of 2022, they've been at record highs because of things like the chip shortage, the production shortage, increasing demand as the economy recovered. So yeah, it's been something we cover. We actually do every week. Black Book sends out an analysis of how car prices performed at auction the week before, and we kind of dissect that analysis that they put out, and then Cox Automotive puts out a similar analysis once or twice a month, and a lot of these different people we follow, kind of are constantly updating prices. So it's always top of mind for us. I believe it was
repackage that and then report on it, or do you just ingest it for your own knowledge and then figure out which stories would be the best based on what you're seeing?
Yeah. So what we do is when they put out an analysis, whether it's Car Global or JD Power or Cox or Manheim, whoever it is, we sort of take that information and write a story from it, and we might include information from 2 or 3 different sources just to give a kind of a more holistic, broader picture. But yeah, we do tend to use a lot of that information and sort of use that data and put it into our own words and put our own spin to it, what we think is happening. And a lot of times, a lot of these companies that share this information will also provide kind of a video analysis, or they'll host conference calls with the media, so we can get a little bit more context and color, and maybe ask some questions and add that to our stories. But yeah, it's something we're constantly reporting on. And in September, I think it was I don't have it right in front of me, but it was first time in, I think it was 18 months at least, that the Manheim Index showed a year-over-year decrease.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, prices are still at record highs. I mean, I think for the number with the Manheim Index, it was a pretty big deal last year when their index hit the 200 level. It hit the 200 level for the first time ever, and it's remained above 200 ever since then, if I'm remembering correctly. But so they've come down. Prices have come down from record highs, but it's been slowly coming down from super high levels. So, I've had, it's funny, people, you probably get the same thing working in the auto industry where friends and neighbors and family will be like, "Hey, Lana, I'm buying a used car, a new car. What advice can you give me?" And what I've been telling them when I get that question is that new car prices I don't think are coming down anytime soon. But it looks like this fall period and into winter, it might be a better time to buy a used car than it was this summer.
Yeah, it is really funny, especially since people think that I have like the hookup to get some car that is definitely not attainable because of some chip store shortage. But I have the power to get that, put my hands on that inventory and deliver it with without a 3-month wait. So yeah, I definitely get that. No, and it's good. It is good to get your insight on what you think the price will be. I tend to agree, and I think new car prices will be above what we would have wanted them to be for the next while. I think that's also just because of inflation and other things, but hopefully we'll get some normalcy with used car. I don't know. We'll see. It's been like such a wild ride for automotive. So I don't know. What else do you think we have in store for us next year? Another pandemic, another shortage?
Man, I think the economy and the auto industry and society in general could use a break from these big news items. But I think some normalcy would be nice. I think one thing I reported on yesterday, so it's kind of top of mind. But the President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act, and as part of that, it includes a tax credit on used electric vehicles. It's the first time there's ever been a tax credit for used electric vehicles, and they and in the story we had in Auto Remarketing today, a lot of this is from a company called Recurrent that provided this data, but most used cars don't meet the threshold to get that tax credit, so they're just too expensive. Essentially, it only applies to cars that are $25,000 or less. So one of the things they mentioned was that, dealers and other people selling these used electric vehicles may be incentivized to lower their price, below 25 grand, in hopes of offering the consumer that tax credit.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And it also includes,
but the 25K threshold that's for used only or also new?
No, I think it does include a new new electric vehicle tax credit, but I'm not sure but the 25,000 is only applicable to the used cars because
I was gonna say you'll basically never be able to get the break.
Right. But one of the things they said, one of the Recurrent in its analysis said that one of the biggest beneficiaries will be plug-in hybrids. Plug-in hybrids are also included in that EV tax credit. So a lot of those actually are below 25 grand. And so, dealers who have those on their lots may see a spike. But all that to say, I think the used EV industry is something we're watching closely, especially as those cars begin to make their way into auctions and the wholesale side of business.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting segment of automotive. So we'll look out for price trends, EVs, used EVs, and I think any other information that you guys want to find out about used, it's Auto Remarketing. I mean, that's where we go for the info. So thank you so much for all the info today, Joe. And everyone should be tuning in. Also, Joe has his podcast, Auto Remarketing Podcast. How often does that go out?
We usually do about 2 to 3 episodes a week.
Awesome. 2 to 3 episodes a week. So you can tune into that as well to see what's happening in the used car world. Thank you again for joining us. And if you liked this episode, InsideAutoPodcast.com. You can find us on all your favorite podcast apps. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alana.
Thanks for listening to Inside Auto Podcast. Check out our other episodes with top entrepreneurs and industry leaders.